Welcome to Grandma Magic, a podcast from the Grandmother Collective. We are a nonprofit organization that supports and advocates for a world where a grandmother's power is seen, cultivated, and activated for positive change. The Grandma Magic podcast is an opportunity to learn more about the unique roles that grandmothers, aunties, and other older women around the world play in advancing positive social development by talking to and learning from grandmother changemakers. We hope this series inspires you, brings you joy, and helps you recognize the enduring magic and wisdom that comes from grandmothers everywhere. My name is Lindsay Farrell, and I'm your host. Today, we're excited to introduce Pat Sabiston, a much sought-after author, motivational speaker, and writing instructor. Pat has published books, essays, short stories, articles, and interviews. Her work has been featured in notable publications like the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, New York Times, Asbury Park Press Edition, Small Press Magazine, NPR, and the Southern Poetry Review. Pat is also the owner of a marketing and public relations firm in Panama City, Florida, and regularly contributes to Christian magazines in the state. Her first children's book, Can't Never Could, was written especially for her great-grandchildren. Pat, we're so delighted to have you with us today.
Well, I'm happy to be here. This is such fun.
Yeah, let's have fun.
I
And
know,
you
let's do.
you sent me the book, and my 7-year-old daughter read it to me immediately in the car after we picked it up at the post office. And I'm so delighted that we were able to get you onto the podcast to share more about that and your incredible life.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so as I always do, we really believe that grandmothers are culture keepers, and not just culture keepers, they transform our culture in so many positive and wonderful ways. And so we've been asking everyone, what is some kind of tradition or ritual or important value that you want to make sure that you're passing down to your future generations, and why?
Well, it's interesting that you just used the word value because I printed up our family values for my family and encouraged them when the girls got married to establish their own family values. And then the second thing, because I've got 3 things I wanted to share. The second thing was at Thanksgiving, I started a journal 12 years ago. And instead of going around the table and asking everybody what they're thankful for, I put a little pad of paper down and they think about it and they write it and they sign it, and those go into the journal. And that has been amazing because some of the family members are no longer with us, and one of them was a grandmother, and I've still got her writing and her thankfulness. But the third thing is Graham's Camp, and I want to encourage every single grandmother that listens to this to start a Graham's Camp. I had my great-granddaughters for several days, and they almost totally unplugged. We did fun things without any digital stuff going on. So
Mhm.
those are my 3 things that I hope get passed down.
Are you doing Graham's Camp every summer?
Yes, ma'am. We started it this year and they cannot wait.
So this is the first year.
And I didn't kill them. It was amazing.
Yeah. That's really neat. I need my own Graham's camp. I wish somebody would just let me come and stay at their house and entertain me.
You are more than welcome. Come on down to the beach.
So, Pat, I want to get to your book, but first I want to understand who you are. You've got this really creative background. What sort of was the life trajectory that led you here?
Someone told me one time that I would become a writer when they became a jet pilot. So my comment back was, "Gentlemen, start your engines." Because my father told me, "Sweetheart, no offense, but writing is an avocation." I wanted to go to college for journalism. My mother said, "Nope, you're gonna go to business school so I can type really fast." But when my girls were little, I went into the basement and I taught myself how to write. The resources are there. I know a lot of your grandmothers, I've heard them say, "Well, I didn't get to go to college." Well, I've only got an associate's degree. If you have a dream, don't let anybody steal it from you. You're never too old to think of a new dream.
So you balanced teaching yourself a new skill in a business that's really hard. Writing is not the easiest business to try to make a living and build a career off of. You did that while balancing motherhood?
Yes, ma'am, I did, while they were napping. And the only glitch I had was when they were supposed to be napping one day, they snuck out of the house and went to a neighbor. And the neighbor called me and she said, "Hey, you missing anybody?" That was the only glitch I had. But yeah, I knew eventually I wanted to own my own marketing and PR firm. So I took courses, I bought books, I just studied it. There's a magazine called Writer's Digest,
Mhm.
and I followed their instructions. I mean, it's not that hard really when you apply yourself.
And so, what did the trajectory look like? Did you start submitting writing places or pitching to newspapers? What was sort of the
All of the above, yeah. Within the first 6 months of starting just following instructions, I published my first short story, and 3 months after that, I published, and this is nationally, my first article. And I was married to someone who moved often because of their career. And so every time I landed in a city, I would get a job with either a magazine, a newspaper, a radio station, a TV station, and I got on the job training, which was just invaluable. My daughter took a marketing course one time and she said, "Mom, you're not going to believe what they said about marketing." And I said, "Well, what they were teaching you was theory. Now let me tell you what reality is."
Yeah, I used to tell my students when I was teaching, you have to put yourself in all the spaces so that you can learn all of the things. So it sounds like that was sort of the direction that you took. Like you were so hungry for it that you just really wanted to be anywhere that people were telling stories and creating.
I think hungry is a good word, but I would even change it to famished. It was a desire that God placed in my heart. And when God places something in you, you cannot not.
All right, so now tell me about your new book. So you wrote a book called Can't Never Could, which is a children's book. What were you hoping to achieve?
Well, it was kind of by accident. It happened during COVID-19, and the majority of my business was medical. So during COVID-19, my business was definitely dead in the water, okay? So I asked God to show me, what do I do now? And I really thought he was going to say, finish that novel because I have a novel that I'm writing. Instead, he impressed upon me a children's book. And I went, I don't know. I don't know. Well, he had me remember I teach a class at the college for seniors about how to capture their life story. And one of the exercises that I have them do, and I work right along beside them, was write a letter to a grandchild that they may never know you, but they will know you through your letter. And that goes into a time capsule that they open when they're 18. Well, that book was outlined in the letter I sent to her for the time capsule. So I decided to hybrid publish it because interestingly, my great grandchildren are exactly the age of their mother when this story happened.
So tell us, don't give away too much, right? So everybody will find it. Go read the
I
book.
don't care. I'll give it away.
Why don't you share a little bit about the book?
Well, I will tell you, my husband's daughter, I'm in a second marriage. My husband's daughter was a single mom. She didn't know me that well. Her granddaughter didn't know me that well, but she was called out of town on a business trip, and she said, "Can you please keep Brandy?" And I went, well, I've raised 2 girls, so I thought, "Okay, okay." But when Brandy came to me, being from a single parent home, she was very insecure about a lot of things. And I fell back on what my grandmother had always told me, which was, if you say you can't do something, can't, never could. And so I started to say that to her, and by the time she went home, she was sure of a lot of things. A lot of things. So I hope your daughter will be sure of a lot of things too, and I hope you use that colloquialism. But there are 2 things really, Lindsay, that I wanna bring forward that have been distressing for me and kind of the impetus behind the book. Little girls lose their self-esteem by the age of 9, okay? Then just the other day, I read the article that children between the ages of 10 and 24 are committing suicide at higher rates than they ever had because they're losing hope. And I'm not downing parents. Please, please hear me. Parents are busy, and I realize that, but grandparents are in the unique position to not only hear them, but to share experiences with them, and I just think that puts us in a very unique position. If we understand what the children are going through, we can be there. We can step into the gap where the parents might not have time or the ability or whatever it calls for. We can be there for them.
Yeah, there's that separation, the lack of multi-generational connection for sure. We're seeing that everywhere around the world, or not in the US, but I mean, loneliness and isolation are something that are plaguing most places. And one of our partners, Cogenerate, calls it age segregation. Like that we've really created areas where only older people go and only younger people go. And we've really kind of accidentally structured our society where we're not having the serendipitous, spontaneous connection and conversation that we once had across generations. So I think you're really right to point that out.
But people also have to be intentional, Lindsay.
Yes.
I intentionally have different pods of friends. The vast majority of them are younger. They help me understand, technology, headsets, microphones. Oh, okay. They keep me young, and that's who I hang with. Because I will tell you another disturbing thing is that nowhere in the Bible is there the word retirement. And I will not retire. I have had people actually I'm trying to become unoffendable, but I've had people say to me, "When are you gonna retire?" And I'm going, "Never. I will never retire." Because the minute you quit, and I'm saying this to men and women, the minute you quit on life, your brain begins to atrophy, and that's not okay. We can always learn something new, do something new. The best way out of isolation is to help somebody else. And that's what your group is doing. They are reaching out to them, going, "Hey, you're still alive. If you can still breathe, you have value, you have purpose."
I'm interested in 2 things based on what you said. The first was, what are you doing to find people from different generations to hang with? Which I know is a real challenge that I hear from people. And the second, what has changed for you as you've aged?
Okay. Where do I find them? They're everywhere. You have to be intentional and look for them. And I have been known to walk up to somebody at a chamber event or at a social event or in church. You can walk up to somebody that's half your age and say, "You know what? I love the way you dress. Can you help me with my style?" They're wanting to give people a part of who they are. You have to just be intentional and keep your eyes open. They're out there. And I literally have pods of people. I have my writer friends who are mostly young. I have my friends. I have my church friends. I have all these different pods. But I think one of the most important things, Lindsay, that has helped me, well, let me just get to the bottom line. I've had age discrimination used against me, okay? And it hurt. It was a long time client, and First of all, I considered the source, and then I pivoted. My business had to change. It had to change because of COVID, but I pivoted in that I used to be doing a lot of brochures, websites, TV scripts, radio scripts. Well, look at what's happened to TV and radio. And brochures, when was the last time you saw a brochure? So now I do training. I write training for clients. And the neatest thing is when you give people information that they can really use and get into that affects their daily lives, they listen to you. Your gray hair builds credibility. They think, oh, wow, she's talking about something I know about, something she's lived. And I think that's more important. We've lived a lot of life, and it's important for people to understand that you might have not have gone through this yet, but you're going to. And that was one thing my grandmother did for me. My dad said, I hate to tell you this, when I went through my divorce, he said, "You're going to have to go tell your grandmother," which was his mother. He said, "You're going to have to go tell her. I'm not going to tell her."
How old were you?
35. And so I went into her living room and I told her, I said, "Grandmother, I'm so sorry." And I was just crying. And I said, "I'm so sorry, but I'm going through a divorce." And she asked me a couple of pertinent questions, which shall go unmentioned here. But at the end of that conversation, she said, "Listen, look at me." And she took my hands and she looked me directly in my eyes. And she said, "Buck up, baby. You're made of better stuff." And she knew what she was talking about because she had been widowed twice before my dad started school. And it was interesting because she was an entrepreneur. I became a business owner. She was on the school board. I didn't know this. I got elected to the school board. She and I kind of walked the same journey together, and I didn't even realize it. She taught a Sunday school class called the Mary and Martha class. I teach a Sunday school class. So I'm not even sure that part of the DNA doesn't meld. So, I mean, I feel like not only was she a part of me in her beliefs and everything that she gave to me, but she's in me. She's part of my body. And so part of that DNA had to transfer somehow. Don't you think?
I have many moments where, especially my mother's mother, who died when I was 14. So I did not get enough time with her on this planet, but she was very adventurous. My mother was born in Venezuela. My grandfather was a geologist. And so they were in Venezuela and then they were in Libya. And I spent about a decade in East Africa as a young adult. Like the adventure bug or whatever definitely comes from that side of my family. And then my grandmother was widowed, and I also am a single mother. And, just as you're saying, like, there's these moments where I think, wow, how did grandma deal with these things?
Well, let me just say to you, this just reminds me of something that was so funny. In that same conversation with her, I was concerned about childcare because I had 2 little girls, and I said, "Grandmother, what did you do about childcare?" And she reared back and she looked at me and she said, "Childcare?" She said, "I told the boys when they got out of school to run as fast as they could away from the bullies and hide under the house." And I just died laughing because, I mean, of course she didn't have childcare. Social services wasn't even a name back then. So she told them to hide under the house until she got home from work. And when she died, I did a document for all my cousins. And they said, "When did you get this information?" And I said, "Did you all not talk with her?" And they said, "Actually, no. We were told to go in, sit down, shut up, and let the adults talk." And you see, I think that's another thing, the thing about there to be children to be seen and not heard. No, grandparents want to engage with them. Let them speak.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you had that opportunity. And to have a grandmother at 35, I'm also quite jealous. I did not get to spend that long with my grandparents. So we've been talking about your sort of recognition of what has happened as you've aged. You're pivoting, you're not retiring. If you think about the role that older women play beyond the family, what are you seeing in your world or in the work that you've been doing? Do you think that they are what we say they are is a really unique opportunity to drive some of these kind of larger social changes that we need?
I mentioned to you about teaching a course at the college, and it's called Education Encore, and it's for seniors, people 55 and older. And as I teach them to capture their life story, this is what's come out. It's almost as if it's a dormant seed in their life. They've been so busy with life up until this point, and a lot of them are widows or widowers. And it's kind of like there's this new chapter that is opening up to them. But until they start to garden their brain, there's stuff that's in there that they're not even aware of until they take time to spend some time in solitude to think. What is it they want? Like I said, they're still breathing. Are they just going to become a couch potato? Or are they going to leave a legacy? In wills and things like that, people want to leave furniture, china. Well, nobody wants it. Okay? I'm downsizing right now and nobody wants it.
I just inherited my great grandmother's china and I'm so thrilled. Just so you know.
Well,
I'm
I'm
so
glad you
thrilled. My aunt gave it to me. I'm very thrilled, but yes, I understand nobody wants it.
nobody wants it, but they can leave a legacy. You see, I think at this point in my life, I'm more excited about the future. Even in this chaotic world, there are so many things that I want to do still. I'm going to finish that novel. I will finish that novel. But there are so many other things. I looked the other day in that storytelling group that you all are leading. And first of all, I just want to give you some kudos. I don't know where this idea came from, but it's a brilliant concept because you are opening up avenues for women that didn't have the roadmap. We have listened to them say, well, I don't have a college education. Well, I never had children. It doesn't matter. You have wisdom. You have knowledge. You have life experience, which is more valuable than anything. You've done an amazing thing, and I want you to know, my young friend, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you have birthed. I really am. It's an amazing concept, and I see big things on the horizon for the group.
Yeah. I mean, for me, capturing the nuance and diversity of ways to live in the world is very important. In what I see now as a world where algorithms are feeding us the same narrative and message constantly, where diversity, which when I was in college in the late 90s, and we used the word diversity with like celebration. Like it was to really try to understand. And I'm also an anthropologist, so I care a lot about cultural diversity. But it's diversity just in their neighborhood, in the communities in which we live in. People have navigated very different lives. And if you don't see yourself in one person's story, you're going to see yourself in another, or at least in a piece of their story. And the more that we, I think, open those dialogues and capture those narratives, the less alone we feel, the less odd we feel, the less strange we feel, and maybe the more connected we feel.
It's humanity to humanity. After we got hit by Hurricane Michael, which was a Cat 5, that absolutely destroyed our community. But you want to talk diversity? When you have nothing and you walk outside that home and you meet people of different colors different, theologies different, everything, but you're all just trying to survive. It brings us all together. And then diversity doesn't have the power because we're all one. We're a humanity who are trying just to survive. You're seeing it right now in the North Carolina and Tennessee mountains.
I saw something on the news today where a couple owns a brewery or something. There's a million breweries in Asheville. And they were saying, we're just going to need a lot of help from a lot of people for a long time. And to even in our sort of American culture, which has taught a lot of us not to ask for help and has taught a lot of us to fear our neighbors, that's profound. It's profound that during these times, you actually will know if your community is resilient if people know how to help.
And they've got mule trains. I love how we're getting back to the basics. They've got pack mules going through those mountains, and I just love it. And one woman said today, and I'm thinking about this for my grandchildren, they were stuck and couldn't get out. So she's going to give them 2 things to put in their car, a paper map and cash. And just say, "Keep it in your car, you never know when you're going to need it." And, it's that knowledge of getting back to the basics, okay? All they had was credit cards. Nope, no credit cards, you need cash. And, oh, yes, this is a foldable map. Good luck on getting it folded back together after you're done,
Yeah.
but it is useful, and that's kind of like a roadmap for life, isn't it? It's getting back to the basics. I so want us to simplify, just simplify our lives.
I know that that's something that our grandmothers are constantly telling us. And actually, young people will say, we did this work on intergenerational communication, and young people will say, I want to go back to a time before I had a cell phone in my pocket. What would that look like? Now they're even having cafes where like you lock up your cell phone when you enter. You can spend an hour or two unplugged, which is, I guess, you also can go to Pat's house and go to Graham Camp and do the same.
Yeah, you can. Yes, you can. But I was watching, this is an older movie, but I was watching it the other day, and there was an analogy that I wanted to give to you about that. It was Eat, Pray, Love, the movie Eat, Pray, Love. And at one point in it, she sat down on the floor and was eating a meal, and she said, "The sweetness of doing nothing." And I think that's what people need to do in a week. God told us to keep the Sabbath. Keeping the Sabbath meant do nothing. Well, I have just now tried to start doing that. It is harder than you know because Sunday used to mean, okay, I'm gearing up for Monday. I've got to get my to do list. And oh, yeah, I've got to get some laundry done in the laundry room. And I need to do this and this and this. Well, no, stop.
You're not doing laundry on Sunday?
No, no more, no more. Nope. I enjoy the sweetness of doing nothing. And I think because you look at the parents, they're on the soccer field, they go to early church. Oh, yeah, there was that science project that's due tomorrow, and we don't have any poster board. Oh, and we ran out of milk. Somebody put the cereal box back in empty. They're driven. And I had to remember to quit striving and enjoy life. Stop. Pause.
I think I was reminded of that during COVID. As stressful as it was, as much as being trapped in a house with a 3-year-old was hard,
Challenging, challenging.
challenging, and very stressful. I definitely took a long time of not getting back to overscheduling weekends and making sure that I always had somewhere to go or something to do. COVID did pause me and kind of shift some of that, but it's sneaking back.
Well, that's why I said, what are your family values? If you can actually crystallize what are your values, and then you build your life around your values.
I had a friend who uses a family motto.
Okay. Okay.
This is like roots and wings. And their family motto is roots
Oh.
and wings. And I was always so jealous. Like, why didn't I have a family motto? But I think values might be more my stride a little deeper, a little
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
specific.
You have to think, what are our values? We've lost touch with our country has lost touch with our values.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So Pat, what's next? Are you writing another children's book? Was that a
No.
no more children's books?
My 2 daughters said, "You have some grandsons, you know." But the book is for little boys and little girls. But no, I really do think I was led to do that book for a reason, okay? And I have a trilogy that I really wanna do, and that's basically the next thing that I want to do, but writing is part of who I am. It's what I'll always do. And capturing stories like we're gonna be doing at Grandmother Collective, it's gonna be great. I just find that to be wonderful.
Well, I had a lot of fun chatting with you today, Pat.
It's been great. We ought to do this more often.
I know. You're made for it, I think. You're definitely made for it. And I thank you so much. Where can people find your writing or your books?
Well, they can go to www.patsabistonauthor.com, and the book is available at Amazon and Barnes& and Noble and Westbow Press. Of course, me, I have my website, and I will actually inscribe it for them and send it to their little girls or boys. But I wanna leave you with one thing too about the book that I found so interesting, and it came from a grandmother. And I was at a show one day, and the grandmother came up to my table, and she was older than me, and she said, "Tell me about this title." And I said, "Well, it was what my grandmother said to me, but I think it came from World War II when we were doing the Victory Gardens." And she shook her head. "Uh-uh." And I said, "Uh-uh." She said, "No, ma'am." She said, "My grandmother said it to me." So I wrote the Library of Congress, and I said, "When did this phrase come into print?" Well, it came into print in the 1800s, which means verbally, because verbal always precedes. It's a Southernism that must have come about probably from Scotland or Ireland or something like that over to the North Carolinas, okay, the Carolinas, and can't never could was something that has been instilled for generations. So I want people to keep it up. Give those kids the knowledge that they can do whatever they choose to do.
Beautiful, Pat.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.